On this episode of the Dudes and Dads podcast, we talk with Bradly Vinson about his new book.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
Andrew,
Joel, welcome back.
hi. How are you?
I'm doing good. It was a busy weekend for us, but it was good. We got a lot done. I got a lot done. Yes, let's say that. I got a lot.
Are we
done
talking around the farm kind of chores? Is that what we're talking
Yeah,
about?
did a lot of stuff around the house, and yeah, it was good. And we had a great worship set here last night. We had Sing Love in.
I saw that out on the only reason I really know that is I saw it on the marquee out in front of the building as I drove up.
And then they led worship today here, so that was amazing. It was great.
That's
So,
good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, we had good morning of today was one of those I agreed. We did some negotiation, and I said, kids, we can go to second service. Go to the 11 a.m., not the 9 a.m.
Nice.
this morning. We had late night marching band in the rain yesterday. Given current, some people, and again, this is like a little bit of a first world problem. Some people are experiencing absolute devastating results from the current weather and hurricane situation. Our results are basically our band. We just played in rain. That's all the percussionists and all that. And Jackie and I were serving on the pit crew, so we're the people that help push equipment on and off the field and all that. So we got like a really upfront. Just got to stand there and watch the rain come down. So did that. Then this morning off to church, and then after that down to the great metropolis of Auburn, Indiana, for a soccer game for Matthew, and then back up here to jump in the studio to be on with you and our guest. And boy, oh boy, am I excited! In fact, so excited that I need to.
You're gonna bring your liquid death water.
I need to. Oh, did you hear that?
I did. Your liquid death water is
the
back.
full experience. Every good podcaster has to drink sparkling water like this. Okay.
Well, we mentioned Bradly, and I'm going to bring him on now. So, Bradly, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Hi, Bradly.
Oh yeah, hey guys, excited to be here, man. I was sending out the link that you guys sent me to get some more dudes and dads in here.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, that's always good. We our best guests are guests that other guests recommend. We find that to be the case. So we're always grateful for any help in getting quality people. Andy, I won't go into too much depth on this, but Andy has been filtering through some real doozies recently of people pitching us. And I don't really know what to say about this other than here. This is the public service announcement for our show, Andy. I'm going to do this. Before you pitch us to be a guest on the show, listen to an episode or two. That's all we ask. Go to the website, maybe. Check out what we're about as a show, and then approach us. Andy, is that fair?
That's fair.
That's fair. Okay, that's all I'm asking. Just check
I say the same thing when people ask to be my friend on Facebook.
Yeah.
Read some posts first.
Yep. Right.
Before you decide you want to be my friend.
Get a vibe for where I'm coming from. I don't have to be friends with everybody. But at least know what you're in for, I guess. Right? That's fair. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Bradly, we have you on because you just released a new book, The Help Method, a guide to supporting little hurting hearts through grief. And that grabbed my attention right away because, as listeners of our show know, my wife and I and my family have experienced stillbirth of our daughter. And so as at that time, we had 3 other kids, and we all had to help them all through that. So immediately when I saw the title of your book, it grabbed my attention, and I screenshotted it and sent it to Joel and said, we have to get Bradly on.
Absolutely.
And so, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking a little bit about grief and walking through that tonight. So, welcome to the show.
Yeah, man, I'm just excited to be here with y'all, man. And it's always good to be amongst the brethren, as I say, right? Just kind of chop it up as men and have a good discussion. So excited about it.
So, Bradly, we always think that the best place to start is as close to the quote unquote beginning of whatever chapter we want to enter into on your kind of life story. First, just tell us about yourself. Tell us about your family. what you do, what you enjoy, help the guests get to know you a little bit, and then we'll move from there. And absolutely want to hear about just the impetus, the beginning of what led to this book.
Yeah, I really start by telling people, and quite honestly, I'm a husband to my better two-thirds, as I say, my wife, father of three, grandfather of five, and I'm just a believer, man, and servant. I think many years I struggled with, what am I going to do next? How do I affect people's lives? What do I
Hmm.
do? And I realized that no, I'm a servant, and whatever it is that I do, I just want to serve through it.
Hmm.
If it's
Absolutely.
graphics, if it's coaching little league, if it's doing this, doing that. Now, my talents kind of lean into the arts. I'm an artist by trade, and my undergrad degree is in graphic design. My master's degree is actually from seminary.
Okay.
And I
Typical
just,
typical career path. I
yeah,
got
typical career
it.
moves, right? And I've kind of been a church kid, church guy ever since I was a lap baby, right?
Mm.
That's just my mom would always take us to church and do those things. But I just like to be in a mix of things, right? I say I love hard. I'm blunt. I'm as honest as I can be. And sometimes I know I wound in the effort to heal. But it's all done in love, right? And so just kind of working through the parts of life, man. We've been married for a while and reared kids, and now I call it reparenting, which is part of our story, part of our grief story. But that's kind of what it is, man. Graduate of LSU, go Tigers, and so yeah, just Louisiana boy at heart, but I've been in Texas for quite a while. And yeah, that's just me, man. I don't have a flowery story per se. It's just living life, man, and trying to make an impact and build a legacy of love and service.
In a less serious note, I do want to know what your feelings are about LSU football right now. Just as a side question. Well,
Well,
I want to get the real
frankly,
I want to get the real fans'
yeah,
perspective.
frankly, I'm a LSU homer. Right. So I'm gonna love them no matter how bad they are. I used to also love the Saints even back when they were the Aints. And so we just love hard, man. We jump in. It's like if we're in love, we're not gonna get divorced, right? And that's kind of how I am with the LSU. And my realness of it, they might get the Poulon Bowl, right? The Lawnmower Bowl. But I'm gonna watch every game if I can and cheer them on. And a great season for me is just beating Alabama and or Georgia.
Okay, got it.
And if
Okay.
either of those happen, we don't need to go to a bowl game. I'm good. And so, because my neighbor's an Alabama guy, right? So it's like we beat Alabama and or Georgia. It was a successful season. So we can be 1-45. But if that one is one of them, I'm good. So
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I wanted the local flair. I wanted to hear what an actual fan feels like. Um so the part that the big focus for our conversation this evening is all around what led to you writing the Help Method, a guide to supporting little hurting hearts through grief. Uh Take us back to what led to this book, to your experiences, and then kind of what helped you decide that through that this resource was going to kind of be born out of all of this in your experience.
yeah, I mean the book itself, because the tragedy, the loss of my 4-year-old granddaughter was in 2016. We lost our only girl, only granddaughter. We have four grandsons. We lost her in an accident at her school in 2016. And so this book has kind of been, 8 years in the making as we live through it and through studying and research and really by lived experience.
Hmm.
But you know, at its core, we had a loss, and it was basically my wife and I are kind of learners and researchers at heart
Mm,
and love education and studying and things. Not that this was like a subject we had to conquer, right?
Mm.
But we knew early on we got to figure out how to lean in and get the tools we need to heal. We didn't flounder a long time, but it was, we found counselors and we found, and found programs for the boys, and different things like that. But it was more so a lot of this help method book is really lived experience because we found ourselves, I call it reparenting.
Mm.
We're raising Alana's brothers. They
Mhm.
were ages 2 and 6 when she passed away. And so they've been with us now for the last 8 years. And raising two little boys that are grieving
Yeah.
and grieving at their maturity level, if you want to call it that, but at their age levels and levels of understanding, and letting these band-aids get ripped off of us as they age because their grief kept is still changing,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what are we learning from this? What are we learning from this? And you read the books and stuff like that, and there's actually children's books that were really good that we would read to them to help them understand grief. But there was nothing like the book. Not that it's the best thing since sliced bread. I don't do all that high and mighty stuff, right?
Mm.
But I don't think there's another book out there like this one. Um, and I love acronyms and I love teaching. And I think acronyms help people remember things easier. And what's so crazy about it, because I was doing these little Facebook videos because I just wanted to share and like, okay, this is my life experience. Maybe it'll help you. And at the time, the older grandson, he was 7, 8 at the time. He said, Paul, is anybody helping kids do this stuff? And I'm like,
Mm.
because he
Oh.
knew what I was doing. And I said,
Oh
no, not
yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And he said, can I do it? And I was like,
Mm.
he's 8.
Mm.
And so we jump on Facebook and we start doing things together. And it kind of became a what this kid wants adults to know about grief,
Mm.
kind of that kind of thing, right? From
Yeah.
a kid's point of view. And I
Yeah.
would interview him and just ask him questions about the holidays and different stuff like that. And he published a book at the age of 9. And it's legitimately his words. Because what we did is we just sat down in my bedroom closet over the course of 3 or 4 or 5 days with a recorder.
Mm.
And I would just talk to him and ask him, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think adults should know? What do adults get wrong? And he's just telling me, right? And we had it transcribed and he has a book,
That's
what this
awesome.
kid wants adults to know about grief.
Mm.
And we launched his book. I keep forgetting when COVID actually started. Maybe I just stripped that from my mind. But he launched the book in January, and we had the tragedy of Kobe Bryant and his daughter passing away.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the news called us to come in for an interview to talk about children's grief.
Yeah.
Wow.
And me and my grandson are doing this interview, and then March came,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And shut all that down, and now the years have passed and things like that. But so all this was still kind of growing in the midst of that in the background. And I was speaking at churches and speaking at men's groups and helping people online. And it came to a point where it's like, you know what? Let's do the book.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do the book. Let's get it out because kids are hurting. We got all these other tragedies going around with kids, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I think they're at a level they're the forgotten grievers. But then I also
Mm-hmm.
think from adults, one of the things that I realized that we did wrong as adults is that we think children are resilient. They're not resilient. They're just grieving at the age of 4,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
right? Oh, grandma, I hate, I'm sorry, little Johnny, grandma passed away last night. Okay, where's my Lego?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not resilience.
Mm-mm.
That's 4
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
because they're just black and white. What's next? What's for dinner? And you think, oh, he's handling this so well. No, he's 4,
Mm-mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
right? And so I wanted the book to kind of speak to that kind of stuff too. It's like, don't ignore that, speaking to what age they are, but don't take these things that children do naturally as resilience,
Yeah.
Mhm. Well,
right?
and I think we as adults have to remember too, like we're grieving ourselves, but it's important to we can't just shut the world out and just grieve. Like we
Right.
have, as I mean, we were talking beforehand before we started recording, and during the loss of my daughter, I was dealing with the grief of my wife and trying to help her through that, and she was trying to help me through my grief. But then I also had my 4 kids, my 3 kids that were still alive at the time, and we can't just shut them out. And even though we may
Right.
not know how it's sometimes hard to tell whether it's grief or whatever, but we have to deal with that and try to treat that and help them experience that and be able to work through that too.
Right.
It-
Well, I would say sometimes I'd have to make agreements with my grief. So I would say, okay, grief, I have to get to work. I cannot drive for 45 minutes through Dallas traffic with tears in my eyes,
Right.
right?
No.
Let me get to work, grief. And when I get there, I'm gonna go to my office. I'm gonna close the door, hide behind the door, because I had a fishbowl glass in front of my
Mm,
office. I'm gonna hide behind the door and I'm gonna give you your time. I'm gonna cry or whatever I need to do for 15 minutes. Just let me get to work, grief, right? And I
mhm,
would grief. I gotta stop by the dry cleaners, I gotta buy groceries.
Mm-hmm.
Just let me not fall out in the grocery aisle because
mhm.
I see something pink and
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about my granddaughter. Just let me get home and cry today,
Yeah.
right? But I wasn't ignoring it. I was acknowledging it, but I was trying to, okay, just let me get through this grief, and I'm going to respect you and give you your time later,
Mhm,
right?
Mm-hmm.
So as we were doing all those things, it's also, okay, I have to go to basketball practice. Let me at least play with the boys in the backyard and give them some joy and not miss that someone's not there, right? Let me be in the moment. So it's all these things, right, that we have to do. And it's not faking it till you make it. It's just leaning into it in a way where you're acknowledging what's in front of you, but everybody might not even be grieving like you're grieving,
Mm.
right? Because we all lost her, but we all lost a different person,
mhm, mhm.
right?
Wow.
Because I
Yeah.
remember my wife, as you were saying before, my wife walks in one day and she says, I just realized that the legacy of motherhood is now broken.
Mhm.
And as a man, I never thought about that,
Yeah.
Mm.
right? Because we have daughters,
Yeah.
but then our granddaughter would have been prayerfully, who knows, would have been a
Mhm.
mother one day.
Yeah.
And now that's gone.
Yeah.
Mm.
The option of that is gone.
Yep.
And as a man, I'm missing my granddaughter, for my wife is just so much deeper,
Mhm.
right? Um,
Mm.
and and not to minimize men's grief, but and I can't relate to this exactly, but I understand the sentiment of it. And when there's a stillbirth, even right, and they would say mothers fall in love with their babies at conception, men fall in love with their babies at birth. And it's not a knock on men, but it's like you're not carrying the baby. You're not.
Right.
Right.
It's a different connection,
You're
Right.
right.
right? And so when stillbirth happens and things like that, everybody flocks to the mom,
Mhm.
and then the dad is like, "Hey, what's up?" Right? And so our granddaughter was with us for 4 years, but then everybody flocked to my daughter, which I'm okay with that. It's not a jealousy thing. Then her dad, but then think about it as a grandparent, right? And those levels of loss, because now everybody that has kids, I think they see their kids as a gift to their parents, right? It's like we got another chance to get it right. We're gonna
Mhm.
give our parents some grandkids, and somebody they can be nice to, right? I mean, we all kind of say
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Yeah.
so, and when that gift is gone, there's another level of grief with that,
Mhm.
right? And then the wake of that and the ripples of that. So it's all these different things in the midst of grief that you have to maneuver. And ultimately, I say, whatever you're doing, as long as it's healthy, you're doing it right. So I always use that as the covering.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You are the expert of your own grief.
Mhm. Well,
Now I'll walk alongside you however long you allow me to, but you're the expert as long as you're doing it in a healthy way.
right,
And I believe all mature adults know what's healthy and what's not. So
right.
we ain't even got to go into that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That's a non-negotiable for me. You know what's healthy, you know what's not.
Right.
And so that being the playing field, I'm here to walk with you as long as you want me to walk with you,
Mhm.
you know.
So let's talk a little bit about your book. The acronym HELP. You mentioned it was an acronym. Can you
Mhm.
can you walk us through the what those that state the HELP stands for?
Yes. H, have the hard and honest conversations, but make them age appropriate,
Mm,
right? Because you're telling a 2-year-old that someone passed away and a 14-year-old, the conversation's different.
yeah.
E, express yourself, which basically means be real in your grief. And I know not to make light of it, but I don't say don't do all the boohoo, crying, slobbing at the mouth, all that stuff in front of the kids, right? You don't want to scare them,
Hmm.
but show the full spectrum of emotion. Let them know you're sad. Let them know that you're thinking about that loved one or whatever it is. So express yourself. Then I have 3 L's: lean in, love more, let them lead sometimes. And the lean in and love more is because children have lost a sense of security when there's a loss, whatever that loss is, right? so and so passed away by accident. Is something going to happen to me?
Mm,
It's that catastrophizing. When is the next boot gonna drop?
mm,
Right. And so you have to lean in more. You got to give more hugs, got to be more cuddly, let them sleep in your bed more, let them sit in your lap more, let them just lay on you more. You got to do extra, right? Lean in and love more. And then finally, oh, let them lead sometimes. And I have a couple of stories about this in the book. I know sometimes we want to take the reins and be in charge of everybody's journey to help them heal. And because they're children, we know best and we're the adults. Let us put the guardrails up on their grief and help them. Sometimes we got to step back and let them lead. And one of the stories I'll let you know real quick, our grandson, the older grandson, he walks in one day because our granddaughter, they actually brought her back to Texas for her final resting place. And it's about an hour from our house to get to the cemetery. And so we would go all the time, and because the boys are little, they got to go with us, right? We're not
Mm,
leaving them at home and stuff.
right.
And he walks in one day and he says, "Hey," he said, I don't like to go as much as you all do. He said, "But I'm too young to stay home by myself. I can't drive." And he said, "I don't mind going on special occasions, like when we go do a little special thing at her birthday." And he said, "But I can't go all the time like y'all go." Right. And we could have took that any kind of, we could have took
yeah.
that multiple
Mm,
ways, right?
Yeah.
And so we had to readjust, and it's like, okay, let's go while he's at school during the day. Let's go while, and we adjusted because that's a part of letting them lead
mm-hmm,
in their healing journey. And taking them to the cemetery all the time wasn't necessarily healthy for him to grieve well,
mm-hmm,
right? And then finally, P, have patience. And I call it circling back because as our boys age now, they're now 10 and about to be 15 in a couple of weeks. 2-year-old grief is different than 6-year-old grief. 6-year-old grief is different than 14-year-old grief.
mm,
And as they age into their 20s and graduating from college and getting married and all those things, we got to be willing to circle back to wherever they are in their grief journey and meet them there. Because 2-year-old, oh, yeah, grandma died. Okay, where's my Lego? At 6, it's like, I miss grandma.
mm-hmm,
At 8, it's like, well, what happened to grandma? Why she died? Well, it changes, right? And you got to be okay with them band-aids getting ripped off because you might be 100 miles up the
mm,
road already
Mm,
or climbing the mountain, as I call it, towards your healing. And now you got to loosen that rope and go down the mountain and meet them where they are.
mm,
And so you got to have that patience. So that's the acronym, right? And if you keep thinking, okay, I need to help them, and you can kind of go through that acronym. It's like, and yes, it spells a word, but you can use them out of order and all those kind of different things as needed, right?
right.
Because you're going to continuously have those hard, honest conversations. You're going to have to continuously express yourself and circle back and let them lead and all those kind of things. So,
and as you've been explaining this, and Andy, from my perspective, I just see as you guys process your loss, I really feel like these things. Just to give an affirmation here, Bradley, because uh, Andy, gosh, your loss occurred. I'm now
2014.
2014.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're over 10 years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
and now with this, and I'm thinking, man, all of these things were so true and so necessary. And so as you've put it here and kind of, well, systematized it to a certain degree, kind of given it a structure, which I think is the easy way, just giving some language to it. Because if we can put language around something, it kind of helps us navigate
Mm-hmm.
it. Andy, I'm just wondering what you think as I'm hearing this and hearing him describe this. That really seems to be pretty consistent, I would say, with your family's experience and thinking through as your kids have gotten older.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, because something I just connected with the way Hattie thinks about this versus the way
Right.
Reagan or Michael or Eli, think about it.
Right. Well, and to tell you what's going on to Hattie
Yeah.
is my youngest, who would have been born after this whole thing happened, and so it's interesting. It's interesting how she's dealt with it because I would say she's still dealing with grief, even though she
Mm.
wasn't there at the time.
Mm.
right?
Right.
She was not around at the time, but she's still trying to process that. And in her mind, that makes it's really hard too, because she's in her mind, she's older than Macy was because Macy never got a chance to age, but
Right.
at the same time, she also knows that Macy's older than her because she's between the next
Yeah.
up. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. But I think that you're right, Joel. I think that I see a lot of those things that Bradley just described
Yeah.
in what we had to do, for our family. At the time, I wouldn't have called it that acronym because I
Right.
didn't know that, but I think
Right.
that's the same thing. And as well as I was thinking too, as you were describing that, and you said those aren't necessarily in order. It's not necessarily HELP. It's the same thing with grief, right? I mean, there's
Right.
people always describe the 7 stages of grief like it's a process checklist to go through, and
Right.
then you're done. And it's really like stage 1, stage 6, stage 5, stage 1. It's a same type of thing. You may go over to the same thing again, and you just like in your acronym HELP, you may have to, like you said, have those honest conversations, hard honest conversations a second time, a third time, who knows how many times.
Yeah.
This grief is not a one and done, go down through the list and
Yeah.
be done.
Indeed. Yeah. And it's I appreciate that you mentioned the 5 stages of grief, and sometimes I get, no pun intended, I get grief
Mhm.
about the 5 stages of grief because I don't follow them. Um,
Well, and
because
apparently I don't either because I called them
yeah,
7 stages. So
right. But it's so funny because they were really written for those that were terminally ill.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. I'm
They
so
weren't written for people
I
that are
am so
grieving.
glad
Right.
you were saying this. I am so glad you were saying this
And
because I hear this all the time too.
yeah,
And it's like I think we people in no fault of their own, the average layperson, I think just kind of imbibes this, and when it doesn't overlap with their experience, it's like, oh gosh, what do I do with this? So yeah,
yeah.
say more about that because I think it's a really key point.
Well, and I believe, especially when people try to find instruction books to help them get through the hard parts of life quicker and easier, you can fall into these things, right? Like somebody might say, my book, oh, if I go through this, it'll be fine.
Mhm.
No, because that's just like how the 5 stages of grief got latched onto. And within the first 10 pages of the book, Kubler-Ross says, this was written for those that were terminally ill, not those grieving a loss.
Mm.
And people still try to latch them on to the grief experience. When I was speaking to a group last week and I was talking, a lady called into the show and said, "Yeah, don't you think that's like the stage of anger?" And
Mm.
I had to go through that. What it's like, no, I'm just angry.
Mhm.
I was angry at God. I was
Yeah.
angry at people that weren't grieving.
Mm.
Yeah.
How dare you be in the grocery store shopping? Don't you know my
Mm.
granddaughter's dead?
Mhm.
Mm.
How dare you be on this freeway? Don't you know my granddaughter's dead?
Yeah.
And that's not a stage of grief. That's just anger,
Mm. Mhm.
right? That's something you're going to deal with in the process of your grief. And so I believe if there's a thing that I follow, I call it the ebb and flow model. You're going to have highs, you're going to have lows. But then I kind of use the symbolism of being out at sea. And whenever the water is rough and things like that, they say the easiest thing to do is just lay on your back and look up, and the ocean will naturally take you inward, right? And I kind of use it as the symbolism of my grief, right? I lay back and I look up to the sky, look up the heavens, look up to God, and I just lay back and let grief naturally take me towards healing.
Mm.
Sometimes the waters are rougher, sometimes they're as smooth as glass, but if I lean in, I'll naturally be taken towards healing. And so that's what I go by. And so the things as they come, it's like, okay, how do I attack or approach or get through this thing? Not where am I at on this chart
Mm.
of aspects of grief, right? Because everybody's journey is different.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a conversation with a new friend of mine today at church actually who just lost an adult child. And and in my work that I've done over years, there's always that dangerous question when you see someone, you're like, when you ask someone who has gone through a loss, hey, how you doing? Right? Like it's, you know, and it came out of my mouth this morning and I was like, oh gosh, here I am saying the same dumb things or asking the same dumb questions. But but followed that up with, I just said, I'm assuming it's a day at a time thing. And uh that, as you're kind of talking about laying, it's kind of letting the grief current take you where it will. Um, just not setting up expectations for your like demanding of yourself a certain stance or certain approach every single day, that you're going to feel the same way about this thing every single day. Because I would look at him and I would say, man, he's been really, from what I've seen of him, really, really strong with this loss. And yet, um, there's a whole, I've only seen him a few times. We've only had a few
Right.
conversations. There's a whole lot of life he's living not known to me.
Correct.
And I don't know. I partly I just wonder, in this world, this image driven world in which we also exist now, where even within the grief community, even the loss, like, if there are these expectations, it can be easy for these expectations of, like, how, quote unquote, how you're supposed to grieve, or the
Yeah.
the pace at which you're supposed to, whatever supposed to even means. Um, what are your thoughts just on helping young people, the kids that we're alongside, kind of managing their expectations about grief? What experience you had, because I'm sure eventually, like, I'm sure you've had to have those conversations, part of the honest conversation and part of, the journey. What what has been helpful in your experience with kind of helping kids get rid of that ought to, I ought to feel
Yeah.
this way by such amount of time, or that sort of thing?
I I approach it not on the expectation of how to grieve. I try to give them permission.
Mm.
So take it this way. I tell them, you have permission to have joy.
Ooh.
You have permission to have peace.
Mm.
You have permission to laugh at a joke,
Mm.
be goofy, get in trouble in class for being a class clown, because grief and joy holds hands,
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
right? Early on, sad was up the mountain from where I was.
Mm.
I just wanted to get to sad
Mm.
because I was destroyed, and sad seemed 100 miles away, right?
Mm.
And so it's like I'm just trying to get to that next level of, the insomnia is gone away, or I can eat, or I forget, I can remember to breathe,
Mm. Yeah.
right? Because you'll be sitting there and it's like, wait a minute, I'm not breathing,
Mm.
right? And I try to tell them, give them permission to be like, you laughing at a joke does not equate to you forgetting about your sister.
Yeah.
You can have
Mm-hmm.
joy.
Yeah.
Go find a girlfriend. Go have
Mm-hmm.
fun with that. Now, it's also, you're under no obligation to tell any of your friends about your loss.
Mm.
Also, though, if you are grieving, you have to advocate for yourself. You are 100% in control of telling people that you're grieving. You are 0% in control of how they respond to your grief.
Mm. Yeah.
That grief
Mm-hmm.
is yours. And it's a harsh conversation, but that grief is yours. It's not your friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your girlfriends. It's not your teachers. So you taking on that suffering, and you taking on that angst of, how are they going to feel if I start crying? You got to relieve yourself of that,
Yeah.
right? And when they were younger, we advocated for them, because they had to join schools here. That they were school at home, but now they're with us. We went and interviewed their teachers and things like, hey, you're getting two little grieving boys in your school.
Mm.
So around September 1st, which was their sister's birthday, they may not feel like doing stuff today. Or, it's like, hey, who's the school counselor? Because when these boys are feeling a certain way, they might say, hey, teacher, can I go? Oh, can I go to the gym? Let's make a code word for it.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
But that means I need to go sit in the counselor's office and cry, or I need to go just sit in the counselor's office for 20 minutes. Let's make some code words. Let's make some things that make them, because it's no different from me. When I was a kid, I had severe asthma. And how dare, what would you think of my parents if they sent me to school without my inhaler, or letting the gym teacher know, or the school nurse, that I had asthma?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with my kids. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
sending them to school grieving,
Good word.
and nobody knows they're grieving.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So now this thing happens, or it's like everybody wear pink day, and their sister's favorite color is pink. And they go to school and every girl is wearing pink and they lose it.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, what's wrong with him? Because we didn't inform the school that, hey, let us know when some of these things are coming up. So we. And so we have to see it as that. It's not a scarlet letter. It's not something to hide. We got to empower them to have some joy, but we got to also help them understand how they're grieving, right? And but it's their story. So they
Mm-hmm.
have friends that never knew they had a sister because they
Wow.
moved here and every
Mm-hmm.
new friend only knows them,
Mm-hmm.
but things come out in the wash, kind of as I would say, right? They're at school doing presentations, and it was like, bring your baby pictures in. And this girl did her little presentation when she was a baby. And my grandson said, you look like my sister.
Mm.
And the little girl didn't know he had a sister. And so it kind of, the parents saw that, like, did Bryce have a sister? Like, yeah, he had a sister. She passed away.
Mm.
Oh, that's what that was about. Right. And it became a touch point and a way for him to even bond with that little girl,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
right, at a deeper level.
Yeah.
But we have to empower them into those things. And joy and grief can hold hands. You can have a whole good month, and then one Saturday comes and you break down. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Yep.
right? That doesn't mean you loved your sister any less for that month. And I told them, because they would even say, I'm afraid I'm going to forget about her. I said, some of the stories you had with her, some of the memories you had, you may forget because you're young.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but that doesn't mean you forget her. You know her, you feel her. Her presence is always with you. The stories may change. One of her brothers was 2 years old when she passed away. I mean, a fresh 2-year old.
Wow.
He was 2 in April. She passed away in May. And he would come to us telling us stories when he was 5 years old about stuff him and Alana did. And it's like, we know they didn't do that,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? But that's his story, and we're going to roll with it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Who knows? Maybe he dreamed about it, and she came to him in a dream and they
Yeah.
had that adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So who am I to say, you and Alana never went to the park, or you and Alana
Mm-hmm.
never went swimming? If he believes him and his sister went swimming, that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
What does it hurt?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so we have to, let their grief be their grief, empower them in that. Yes, put that cocoon of protection up, like that's yours, and don't let anybody infringe on that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then live that out your way as
Mm-hmm.
long as it's healthy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I do as they even age and the new questions come, and the more maturing mind has different questions like, is he ready for that answer? Right.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking, but is he really, really ready for that answer? And we maneuver that as we should, right? And we
Yeah.
have those discussions. So
Yeah.
Bradley, I'm wondering, in terms of warning signs, things that you want to be looking out for with your kids, in the process, because as we've said, every kid will respond differently.
Mhm.
Their grief is as individual to them, and yet I'm wondering, if you would have, just some red flags that you would raise, if you were able to identify and say, okay, these behaviors, or I'm seeing this in my child, or I'm experiencing these things, and that would be of concern to you, and kind of an indicator of, okay, we're maybe beyond just the experience of loss and grief. This is now maybe pushing our kids into unhealthy places.
yeah.
Um, what would you identify those sort of things? What would they be for you?
Yeah. Now I would say the caveat is your kids better than anyone else does.
Mm-hmm.
You know their personalities even at young ages, right? So if you had the flamboyant, everybody's my friend kind of kid, and then loss happened and they don't want to be around nobody, flag,
Mm-hmm.
right? You had a kid that was super quiet and, always just kind of played to themselves, but now they're overly touchy feely, even with everybody. Oh, can I have a hug? Can I have a hug? It's like they're losing that. They need security and they may find it in unsafe places
Mm,
because they need, so,
mm,
but it's all with knowing your kid,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because our kids were always huggers. and things like that. And what's so weird, I think even now, because we have a teenager in the house and that has its own problem,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Amen. Amen.
But yeah, but some of the things are hanging on through the teenage years
Mm.
that may be grief related. Because like teenagers, you can have a huggy kid, right? But they become a teenager, they release some of that because it's the hormones and all that stuff, and
Mhm.
my parents are gross or whatever else, right? But my grandson is still a big hugger of us, not everybody, but of us.
Mhm.
And I'm like, is that grief or that just his personality
Mm.
still?
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes we might have to say, hey man, what's going on? Are you worried about something? Every time I walk outside to, make sure the car is locked. Papa, where you going? Right. And so you gotta speak into that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be like, man, why you always asking what I'm
Mhm.
doing? No, it's like, why are you asking what I'm doing? Are you worried about something? Because here's the thing that and I hate to say it this way, but as parents of grieving children, we're no longer allowed to lie to them
Hmm.
the way that other parents can.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
I can't tell my grandsons, I promise I'm not going to let anything happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Right.
it has happened to them.
Right.
I promise
Mm.
I'm going to be home tonight.
Mm.
Now, I'm going to do my best to make it back home. Right. But that we know as adults, that little yellow line, that dotted line in that road don't do nothing for
Mhm.
nobody.
Yeah.
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 Right. And so it's so you don't say the hard stuff, but you just have to make sure you don't do the typical lies we're
Mhm.
able to tell our children, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, Papa gonna do his best to take care of y'all.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I can't promise nothing's gonna ever happen to y'all.
Mhm.
Because then what kind of thoughts am I putting in their head then? Well, did Papa let that happen then?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he let that happen to her? And he's promising us it ain't gonna let it happen, And so you don't want to speak in all those euphemisms and little white lies and stuff to you. Just be honest, just eliminate that from your
Mhm.
vocabulary versus giving them the hard truths of life. Because we're living in a fallen world
Yeah.
and things
Mhm.
happen, accidents
Yeah.
happen, we have losses,
Mhm.
and they don't need all that on their life, right?
Yeah.
They need to still be able to be children. So let's just skip saying that stuff and not give all the harsh realities, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that's things we have to be aware of too.
Okay.
That's a good word. Yeah.
One of the
Yeah.
things that I really like, excuse me, one of the things I really liked about your book is it's short and
Hmm.
it's like 48 pages, and I appreciate that for several reasons. I'm not that much of a reader. I like reading a little bit, but I'm not that much of a
I
reader.
was about ready to say,
Right.
first of all, Andy
But
loves himself a short book. Yeah.
but secondly, because especially in grief and when you're dealing with grief,
Yes.
whether you're directly grieving yourself also, or you're just helping a family friend through it. Joel and his family were super close to us during the time of our daughter.
We're still close.
Well,
to
yes,
them,
yeah,
for
we're
the
still close,
record.
but we're super close to us and instrumental in being there and helping us through our loss. So either whether you're helping somebody else through it or you're doing it yourself, a short book
Yeah.
that's super helpful is helpful because you don't want to read a 300-page book when you're trying to help somebody.
And someone going
Right.
through, and this would be a good, just a quick follow up, an addendum, an annex to Andy's observation there. Number one, I mean, Bradley, I'm assuming you would prefer that everyone read this book before they go through a loss. Ideally, am I wrong?
Preferred, yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah.
Because there is, and I saw this with Andy and Julie, and to their credit, did so as best I think as anybody could. Their bandwidth to take in
Mhm.
almost anything beyond the immediate day to day, like one step in front of the other.
And sometimes that was even tough.
Even that was tough.
Yeah.
So putting a book in, I'm wondering about the practical reality of putting a book in front of somebody in the midst of their loss. And I'm thinking of actually someone right now
Oh, yeah.
where it's like, how would I approach this? Because it's probably not something I would give to them right in the midst of the
Mhm.
storm. So it's either I'm guessing, hey, let's take the time and read this ahead of time for the sake of not that we're anticipating our kids are going to
Right.
go through a loss, but the reality is the chances are good that some sort of loss will occur. some sort of loss will occur,
Yeah.
whether it's to them directly or a friend that they have or something
Mhm.
like that. And so I'd say be proactive on that side.
Yeah.
Um, but then also, maybe there might be an opening or an opportunity when someone is going through a loss, at some point, maybe to introduce it to them. I wonder how you've thought about that, or what
Yeah.
you kind of your
Yeah.
intent was in as far as the timing goes.
Well, frankly, I mean, the thing about it, I wanted to have more of a Reader's Digest book than a War and Peace book.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm kind of get in, get out, and frankly, I call it a bathroom reader. Right? You
Yep.
can go in there and knock it out. Done. Because it's like I want to get the information in front of people as quickly as possible,
Mhm.
without all the fluff, without all the academia. Simple. A mentor of mine say, put it where the goats can get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Make it simple, easy to understand, and go right. Now, introducing this book to someone, and I introduced it to a family recently myself because someone from my church called and said, families had a loss. I called them and I said, hey, I I can walk with you, but I also have this book if you don't mind if I send it to you. Right. And I think just being available and saying I'm willing to walk with you is the first step. Then say, hey, I found this resource. It's real short. I'll send it to you.
Mhm.
And then in a few days say, hey, did you get a chance to look at it?
Mhm.
Right. But usually how I approach people, especially when there's a friend that has had a loss, I don't even do it per se through this. I target them and I ask them what's called the DEAR questions, another acronym. I didn't make this one up. But when people first start grieving, it's the DEAR acronym: drink water, hydrate, eat, exercise and or move around,
Mhm.
rest. Because it's the basic things that we forget to do when we're grieving.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so you're talking to your friend, say, hey, when's the last time you eaten, man? I know you probably don't have an appetite, but did you eat something? You know, can I bring you a case of water? How you resting? Yeah, I know, man. I had insomnia too. I wake
Mhm.
up every day like clockwork at 3 a.m. every day for months. You're right. So you all the stuff that your body forgets, you just want to remind them, take care of yourself in these ways. Help them put their oxygen on first. Because if they're
Mhm.
not prepared and their brain ain't functioning, how they gonna help these kids? And it's the harsh reality. Yes, we're all grieving, and I'm not saying ignore your grief, but get your oxygen mask on and then start to maneuver this thing as best you can.
Mhm.
Because I don't want anything to make someone feel like they're failing, right? So I don't want to hand them this book. It's like, oh, I haven't talked to the kids yet.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm not. I go hide in my closet. I'm not expressing myself. Oh, they keep trying to hug me, but I keep crying, so I push them off. I don't want them to feel like they're
Sure.
messing up,
Sure.
Mhm.
right? That's why I said my book is not the end all be all. This is what's getting us through.
Mm.
And this is what I know has helped other people when I gave them these tools even before the book was written.
Mhm.
So it's not even for everybody, right? But I think it can help everybody. There might not be help, but they might see that and be like, we at least need to talk, right?
Mhm.
So it's a T instead of a H.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of having, I want to talk to the kids. I don't want to have
Yep.
a hard conversation, but
Yeah.
at least talk about it, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that's the mode that I want to be in. And it's a tool. If you're a loving friend, a caring friend that's walking alongside someone and they have kids in their midst, just say, hey, I found this resource. It's 50
Mhm.
pages.
Yeah.
And the book is actually even dimensionally small. It's not a 6x9, it's a 5x8 book.
Okay.
So you could throw it in your purse, put it
Yep.
in your glove box, right? It's like that kind of book. And it
Mhm.
was meant to be that. Like I said, I'm not trying to write War and Peace. I'm trying to get information in your hands where it's like, oh, it's in my glove box, flip through it. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
It says express myself, and here's some ways I can do that that's safe.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I
Right.
was gonna say. I really enjoyed in the book. So you sent it to me yesterday, and I read it since yesterday. So I've completed it again.
Yeah.
It's a quick, easy read.
Yeah.
But I also like that you did have examples in there, as well as like reflective exercises and self assessment questions. It's kind of a workbook, so that you can be working through these things yourself. It's
Yeah.
not just a read it, but kind of journaling and writing down your thoughts at the same time. So yeah, I really, really appreciated that.
Yeah. And just trying to make people aware, right? 'Cause it's like we talk about let them lead. It's like, well, when was a time that you didn't let the kid lead?
Mm.
So now you're thinking back, right? Now you can revisit that conversation. Hey, you came the other day and you wanted to look at, you wanted to look at some of grandma's blankets. And I said, now is not the time. I just wasn't feeling good about it then. And say, but hey, but if you ever want to do that again, let me know. And
Mm.
we'll bring out grandma's
Mm.
old blankets and get wrapped up in them and watch a movie. Right. And so I just want to bring awareness and get that third ear and that third eye going, as I say, right. And be more aware and see more to help the adults, be observant of the kids that are grieving around them. There's one thing that I think but I did put it in the book because I was trying to figure out where to make it fit. But out of all of that stuff, I think one thing that I want adults to be aware of is that kids do not want us to be sad.
Mm.
And
Mm.
if they feel their sadness is going to make us sad,
Yeah.
they're not going to show it.
Mm.
Um, and I want to give all the adults permission and empower them to go to their children and say, hey, I want to help you find another trusted adult you can talk to about your grief.
Mm.
And they won't tell me nothing you said. You don't have to tell me nothing you said unless there's a health or safety concern. So you can go give them some of your sad talk and it won't affect me, but it'll help you heal. I want you to have that. And because I'm also, I work at grief camps for kids. I'm also a chaplain. And when my wife and I introduced this at the grief camp for families, you should have saw the weight being lifted off of
Oh.
children
Mm.
when I'm sitting there with their parents and I'm saying it for the kid.
Yep.
Mm.
So that's your next project. Sit with your child and say, hey, is there another trusted adult you might want to talk to? I know you don't want to say everything to me because I know you might not want to make me sad. And it's okay if you make me sad because I want to feel what you're feeling.
Mm.
But if it makes you feel better to talk to another trusted adult that we both trust, right? I'm okay with that.
Mm.
But you have to say it. Don't just be okay with it. You got to say it to them. And I think that out of the whole book, if you just start that off with your kids, because your kids love you,
Mm.
right? They don't want you to hurt, just like you don't want them to hurt.
Right.
And kids have magical thoughts, right?
Mm.
I made mommy and daddy sad.
Mm.
I made this happen, right? And so that can relieve them of some of that too,
Mm.
right?
Man.
So.
Just as the book does, we have really just solidified, distilled down, I think, just some really, really helpful things to think about. And Bradley, I wonder what if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to know more about what you're doing. So we want to put your wise words out into the world as best we can within our sphere. Tell us about how people can interact with you, where they can
Get the book.
Get the book. That's the number one important thing. But
Yeah.
even where you are out on the social media and digital world.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook just as my name. And I'm also Coach Bradly V on Facebook for the professional page.
Yeah.
My website is Bradly Vinson, which is my name, and they can see some of the things that I offer there. I do some one-on-one coaching, but I also do speaking and training and things like that. The book is on Amazon. You can look it up by my name or The Help Method, Bradly Vinson, because I think there's a couple other books out there called The Help Method or The Help Movie that usually pops up when people search for it.
Sure.
So I say put in The Help Method and my name, and that'll usually get it there for you. But that's kind of it, man. And I just want to be out here serving and speaking and teaching and helping people as I can.
Well,
We're immensely grateful for this and the work that you're doing, and I think the grief community will be better off for this contribution for sure. So we're so glad for the conversation. But before we let you go,
And now it's time for the Dudes and Dads Pop Quiz.
thank you.
all
Ray.
right.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Okay.
So you got the pop quiz. So if you've never joined us, guys, this is the time where we just ask Bradley some random questions that have nothing to do with grief.
We're gonna give him some grief, though. I'll tell you that.
He can't prepare for it. And Joel, do you have a first question?
I
for
got a
us?
first question here. Bradley, you mentioned that you're in the graphic design world, and this is a professional decision that you have made, and so I want to know, as a lay person, what is your biggest design pet
Cool.
peeve. What do you see out there in the design world? When you see it, you just have to you clench up, you start to you grate your teeth. You're like, come on, what, we got to know better than this. What is it? Design pet peeve.
Ransom note design.
Oh.
When somebody uses all kinds of fonts and colors and stuff like that, what I say in the general sense, text is meant to be read, not RED, but READ. If it's important enough to say it, make it legible so we can read it. So don't use all the scripty fonts and all. Make it legible.
Yeah. So
There's a reason Facebook is all sans serif.
thank you.
There's a
Thank
reason.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. So,
Back in my corporate days, there was a time where I was responsible. I was trying to get everybody on the same page with their email signatures, which involved getting the Comic Sans. These are professional people, and they had Comic Sans in their doggone email signature. I put my foot down, and thank you for affirming my choice. I appreciate it.
there you go. There you go.
All right, Bradley, what are you currently curious about?
Not to bring it back to grief, but I'm curious about the meaning of it all sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because really in about 100 years, everything we know is going to be different, and we won't be here. So what are we leaving behind to really make a difference, and how do you continue to live without being here physically? That's what I'm most curious about. So it's really building a legacy, and I realize that creating graphics is cool, but helping people through the hard parts of life is legacy building.
Beautiful.
So that's what I'm most curious about, how to keep living forever.
Beautiful.
In this world when we have stepped away from it.
Bradley, apart from the Bible, what book has made the biggest impact on your life?
I would say a series of books, and it'd probably be the Walter Mosley Easy Rollins series. You probably heard of the movie Devil in a Blue Dress that had Denzel Washington in it.
Yeah.
So he has a whole series of these books, and they all have a color in it. Little yellow dog, white butterfly, and so really cool. He's a cool detective dude. No superpowers, just kind of a man in the hood hanging out. And I just kind of love those stories of people that's willing to get neck deep in the community and help regular people.
Yeah.
Every now and then he'll get beat up because he's not a superhero, gets roughed up by different people. And so, I think though, because I'm not into the business books and all that, that's not really my thing. I like reading biographies. One of the best ones that I read outside of Malcolm X was Blues All Around Me, which is the B.B. King biography.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Bradley,
So,
this is my little thing. So for Father's Day a few years ago, I got my father-in-law, it was myself, my dad, and my father-in-law, tickets to a B.B. King show. He passed like 2 months later after that. And I will say it was just the greatest experience that I could have possibly asked for with those two men. So I gotta write that down. That's awesome.
Yeah, check that one out, man. Blues All Around Me. It's a good one.
All right, my last question. Which talent would you like to have the most? You could pick any talents that you don't have. Which one would you want to have?
It'd be somewhere between a blend of singing and playing a string instrument.
Okay.
Maybe guitar, something like that. Yeah.
Because he wants to write
because
the
of my
sequel.
allergies. I can't hear well because of my allergies, so I'm kind of tone deaf. And so being able to sing and play an instrument probably the one, some kind of musically inclined talent.
Beautiful. Bradley, my final question to you. We're going to end on a deep. We're going to end on a deep
Okay.
on this, because the words, Bradley, you had to share about joy. I love that. I want to know right now, what is bringing joy to you right now?
My family, man. My love language is touch and time. So I don't have to be doing much to feel love. I can just be sitting in a room with people I love, and that's how I get fueled. And so that's what brings me joy, and it's kind of a contemplative joy. I don't have to be turning flips and let's go have some adventure. It's just the people I love in my near vicinity,
Mm,
and I'm good.
that's beautiful.
Love it.
I'm so glad you have those people, Bradley. That's really that's I think for those of us that have experienced that, we know exactly what you're talking about, and there's really just nothing better. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, my friend, this has been an absolute joy, an absolute treasure. Thank you so much. As always, everybody, you can head over to dudesanddads.com for the show notes. We'll make Bradley embarrassingly easy to find over there.
All of the notes, all of the links that he had mentioned will be in our show notes. So-
Beautiful, beautiful. Dudes and Dads podcast at gmail.com. If you got future show ideas, harsh rebukes for us, whatever it is you got, send it that way. We'll take it. It's fine. Grateful for each and every one of you tuning in, and this has been another really great experience, good conversation. So until next time, friends, we wish you grace
and peace.